It is July 16th, 1945. The Trinity test sees the explosion of the world's first atomic bomb. Exploding with the equivalent force of 20,000 tons of TNT, the bomb marks the beginning of a new era. Robert Oppenheimer's remarkable leadership was key in the creation of the first atomic bomb, indirectly sparked the nuclear arms race, and brought the world the ever-present threat of nuclear war. Oppenheimer expressed feelings of both guilt and pride over his groundbreaking accomplishments.
In Berlin, on December 17, 1938, German physicists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann bombarded a sample of uranium with high-energy neutrons. To the shock of scientists everywhere, the uranium atoms split in two, releasing energy. This artificial nuclear fission reaction provided a revolutionary new method of producing energy. Physicists around the world theorized that by utilizing this fission reaction, one could create a bomb of unfathomable destructive power. Soon, the Nazis began making moves to develop a nuclear bomb, and the United States launched its own competing program. General Leslie Groves was chosen as director of this top-secret program, codenamed the Manhattan Project. In 1941, General Groves met with the charismatic 25-year-old Robert Oppenheimer, and soon after appointed him scientific head of the Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer, a prominent international scientist teaching physics at the University of California, Berkeley, was known for both his incredible intellect as well as his biting, caustic remarks. Oppenheimer and Groves selected a mesa in New Mexico known as Los Alamos as the base for the Manhattan Project. The goal was to bring together and unite the many small groups already working on fission across the country.
Bringing the scientists together was one thing, uniting them was another. Oppenheimer had a unique ability to unite this extensive group of highly intelligent scientists with strong and often conflicting opinions. He possessed remarkable technical prowess, speaking in depth with anyone about any part of the project. Scientists felt empowered and more intelligent in his presence. He could inspire people in a way few others could, making everyone feel valuable to the project. These were Oppenheimer's most important leadership qualities, enabling him to play an essential role in the creation of the first nuclear bomb.
He had every aspect of Los Alamos under control. He knew what was happening in the machine shop, he knew what was happening in the theoretical physics division, he attended all the seminars, he was on top of it all and he contributed to it.
As I got to know the scientists, they were by and large a highly opinionated lot. I thought there are very few people who could have occupied a position like that, keeping these hundreds of technically trained people as interested and as faithful as they all were. People were immensely impressed by him.
In July 1945, the first plutonium atomic bomb, nicknamed the Gadget, was ready to be tested. All the scientists prepared themselves for what they hoped would be an enormous explosion. Robert Serber recounted,
"I saw first a yellow glow, which grew almost instantly into an overwhelming white flash, so intense that I was completely blinded. The first thing I succeeded in seeing after being blinded by the flash looked like a dark violet column, several thousand feet high. Sometime later, the noise of the explosion reached us. It had the quality of distant thunder, but was louder. The grandeur and magnitude of the phenomenon were completely breathtaking."
3 weeks later, Little Boy, the first uranium bomb, obliterated the city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, a plutonium bomb nicknamed Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki. In total, the bombs killed 214,000 people. Most of those killed were civilians.
On August 15, 1945, the Japanese officially surrendered unconditionally. World War II was over. America rejoiced in the dawn of a peaceful world, hailing Oppenheimer as a hero for his invaluable work.
I mean, he had saved the country as people saw it then. He seemed to have been the person who did more than any one individual to help us win the war.
Every scientist I interviewed insisted that if anybody else had been the leader of Los Alamos, they never would have finished it by August 1945.
But Oppenheimer's legacy extended farther than the end of the Second World War. His work as a leader on the Manhattan Project had profound consequences for mankind. When the Soviet Union tested its first atomic weapon in August of 1949, a massive arms race began between the world's two superpowers. More research was conducted to build even more powerful and deadly bombs. After little more than a decade, the two nations had amassed enough nuclear weapons to wipe out the entire human race. Nuclear conflict was narrowly avoided in near misses, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis. The existence of atomic weapons likely prevented the Cold War from going hot because each side knew that in striking first, they would trigger their own destruction through the retaliation of the other side.
But the threat of nuclear weapons did not die with the Cold War. In 2006, North Korea tested its first atomic bomb. Iran now has the ability to enrich uranium, and Saudi Arabia has promised to match Iran's nuclear capability.
His work, his legacy is living with us today. We're now grappling, for instance, with proliferation and most immediately with whether or not the Islamic Republic of Iran is going to get the bomb.
According to a 2013 report by the National Nuclear Security Administration, a handful of highly enriched uranium, or plutonium the size of a grapefruit, is all that is needed to make a nuclear bomb with the potential to kill hundreds of thousands of people. Many believe it is inevitable for terrorists to eventually gain hold of a bomb, either by stealing one of the 23,000 atomic weapons in the world, or by building a crude one.
Oppenheimer's legacy is a mixed one. While his leadership ended World War II and likely prevented millions of deaths during the Cold War, it also paved the way to a world forever threatened by the risk of nuclear war and mass destruction. How did Oppenheimer feel about what he had brought into the world? Sometimes it seemed as if Oppenheimer felt very guilty about the weapon he created. In a meeting with President Truman, he exclaimed, "Mr. President, I have blood on my hands." Oppenheimer also said,
"We have made a thing, a most terrible weapon, that has altered abruptly and profoundly the nature of the world. We have made a thing that by all the standards of the world we grew up in is an evil thing."
An associate remembered Oppenheimer musing over the victims of the bomb. Those poor little people. Those poor little people.
On the other hand, Oppenheimer apparently also saw the development of the atomic bomb as both inevitable and necessary. He said, "When you come right down to it, the reason we did the job was because it was an organic necessity. If you are a scientist, you cannot stop such a thing. If you are a scientist, you believe that it is good to find out how the world works."
He understood that while inventing the atomic bomb was inevitable, you can't stop science. He also understood that we human beings have to find a way to control this. And so this is very much a current dilemma that we're all grappling with today.
Likely, Oppenheimer was neither completely plagued by guilt, nor was he entirely pleased with his legacy. He was torn between pride in his scientific accomplishments and anguish at how he had advanced the destructiveness of mankind.